So the question is, why are bodybuilders running high blood sugars? I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever's on your mind, bodybuilding or non-bodybuilding. We go right into the questions. The first two questions on the show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Actually, you know what? Let me pull up the other ones because this one was from last week. Let me see here.
Dave Palumbo Experience app, for those of you who don't know and are not privy to it, you can download it at your iTunes store, your Android store, and it's $29 a month. You get me as a coach in your back pocket, essentially. All my videos, writings I've ever done in one place, my diets, off-season, pre-contest, all that information is available for you in one little convenient reference packet. And every week we put up a Q&A video that I do exclusively for the app members. I also answer everyone's questions who are app members in the app in an open forum, so everyone sees everyone's questions and answers. It's a good learning experience, and we put up a workout every single week. So don't miss the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Download it at your iTunes and Android store. There's my commercial.
Again, you promoting your own products on your own channel.
God forbid I do that.
Yeah. So no, I had the questions from last week. So all right, here we go. Your thoughts on metformin for a female competitor, a physique competitor, or a male competitor? It says classic physique. So let's zoom in on the female competitor. Your thoughts on metformin for female competitors?
Well, it's either or, basically. It's the same answer, essentially. Metformin, what it does is it prevents the liver. The liver stores glycogen, which is stored sugar, basically. And it can release this glycogen as sugar into the bloodstream whenever it wants and raise blood sugar in times when your blood sugar is low, which is a good thing, right? Because if you're working out and you're running out of a little energy and your brain needs some fuel, your muscles need fuel, the liver can kind of release it. But the liver does this arbitrarily, especially at night. It releases a lot of glucose. And a lot of times the body can't release enough insulin to absorb the glucose out of the bloodstream. So you wake up with high fasting blood sugars in the morning. Metformin stops the liver or blunts the liver from releasing quite as much glucose as it normally would. So it helps regulate, it'll help you wake up with a better fasting, blood sugar. Here's the problem though. And this is a very important point. And I've thought long and hard about this because I said, what's the bodybuilder? I see a lot of bodybuilders with high fasting blood sugars, and their hemoglobin A1Cs, which is the 3-month average blood sugars, are a little higher than they should be. What's going on here in bodybuilders? We would think that if you work out and you train, you should have better blood sugars, right? Because we know that working out and exercise increases insulin sensitivity. And what all that really means is it means that on the cell membranes of all our cells in our body, we have insulin receptors, okay? A lot of people are what we call insulin resistant, meaning that they have enough insulin in their body, they just can't absorb the insulin. They can't use the insulin because they don't have enough receptors. And that's when you don't have enough insulin receptors, you're said to be insulin resistant. But people who work out have a lot of insulin receptors because working out raises insulin receptors. We know that, and makes it easier to absorb, glucose into the blood, into the cells, so they can be used for fuel. It only makes sense, right? You work out, you're going to want to be able to use that energy better. It's couch potatoes that have poor insulin sensitivity. So the question is, why are bodybuilders running high blood sugars all of a sudden? Well, the problem is we don't produce enough insulin. And and like I said, I thought really hard about this. I said, why would a bodybuilder who weighs 250 pounds, who works out like an animal, has 0% body, why would they be insulin resistant? Or it doesn't make sense. I said, but it does make sense that they're eating 8 times a day. Okay. Some people take GH, which makes it, harder for your insulin to work. But let's talk about the 8 times a day they're eating. I think their bodies are just not producing enough insulin because they can't, because we're asking the body to produce way more than it ever conceivably would. Who eats 8 times a day? The body wasn't manufactured. God didn't create the body to eat 8 times a day. If you probably in caveman time, if you ate once a day or twice a day, you were lucky, So our pancreas can't produce enough insulin. And when we put that demand on it for years after year after year, and then we had GH on top of that, which makes it even harder, what happens is we start running high fasting blood sugars because we're not producing enough insulin. So for the bodybuilder, I really believe that a drug like metformin, which just basically it just stops some of the glucose from being released in the bloodstream, I don't think that fixes the problem. The problem is that the pancreas is being overworked, and eventually it's gonna quit, and it's gonna stop working altogether because it's just too much demand on it. So for bodybuilders, I truly, truly believe that supplementing with insulin, and I always break Milos's balls here about his insulin protocols, but his blood sugars are normal now because probably from all the insulin he took over the years. And I felt that way. I always felt that way. Even when I was competing, I was taking, Humulin R or Novolin R, whatever. I don't remember what we were using back then, but it was kind of like a mid-range insulin. And that took the burden off my pancreas because I couldn't absorb my food. I was noticing I was walking around flat all the time. So bodybuilders are not producing enough insulin. So supplementing with a long-acting insulin helps a lot. And sometimes, taking like a short or fast-acting insulin at big meals is helpful too for bodybuilders. But I really think the addition of a long-acting insulin is a much better solution than metformin for both men and women who are running high fasting blood sugars. You're not going to get fat from a long-acting insulin. You're not going to go low blood sugar from a long-acting insulin because it works in the background. But what it's doing is it's taking the burden off the pancreas, the beta cells, from having to produce so much insulin. So let's say the pancreas produces 100 units a day, arbitrarily. No reality of that number. If you take 20 units of insulin a day, now your pancreas only has to produce 80 units a day, which might be the difference between it producing enough and not producing enough. So that's my answer. It's a long, convoluted answer, but you have to understand the science of what's going on. And in bodybuilders and people who train elite level athletes, insulin resistance is never really an issue. Okay. It's not enough insulin. That's 99% of the time. Now, if you have polycystic ovarian disease or you have a genetic disorder, different story. But for the average person who's a bodybuilder and is running high blood sugars, it's a quantity issue, not a receptor issue.
Second question, again, these questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Seems to be a debate at this user's gym regarding shorter periods of high-intensity cardio multiple times per week or versus rather steady state for contest prep. Your opinion?
I've talked, it's probably answered this question 400 times already, but it's worth re-mentioning, I guess, if people are still not sure about it. Cardio works like this, okay? Your body, as soon as it starts moving, is using fat as a fuel source. So just me sitting here flipping my hands around on the show like an Italian is using fat as a fuel source. When I walk on a treadmill, I'm using fat as a fuel source. As I start moving faster and faster and faster, there's a point where the intensity level gets so high that my body cannot generate ATP, which is the fuel the muscle uses, from oxidizing fats fast enough because it's a slower process, even though you produce a lot of energy from it. And my body has to start using glucose as a fuel source, carbohydrates. High intensity cardio uses glucose as a fuel source predominantly. Problem with that is if you're doing cardio to get in shape for a competition, you really don't care about, cardiovascular conditioning like a runner would, triathlon person, a swimmer. Those people need to get their heart rate up to a very high level, and they need to use carb, and that's why they eat carbohydrates to fuel themselves, because they're trying to get their heart in a better shape so that it can pump blood more efficiently so they can run faster or swim faster or bike faster. It doesn't matter to the bodybuilder how fast we can ride a bike. We just want to look cosmetically lean. To do that, you want to do cardio that targets stored body fat, that burns fat exclusively as fuel. Steady state, there's a million names. I call it long, slow distance, low intensity cardio, whatever you want to call it, that burns fat exclusively. So if I go on a treadmill and I put the treadmill on, 3.5 miles per hour and I walk, which is a nice fast walk, I'm going to burn exclusively all fat at a nice pace. If I put it up to 4.2 miles per hour, I can no longer walk fast. I have to start running because it's too fast to pace. Now the intensity level has gone high enough that my body is going to require carbohydrates as a fuel source, and I'm no longer burning stored body fat. I am burning calories, but I'm not burning the right calories. And so my take on cardio for getting in contest shape is to do lower intensity cardio. Doesn't mean that you should be walking at 1.0 mile per hour. It means that you should take it to the limit without going over the limit, where you're going to go from low intensity to high intensity cardio, because as soon as you make that jump, you change fuel sources in your body. And that's not what we want. And so whenever I talk to people, so I get a lot of clients who've been doing I love high intensity cardio. I think it's the only thing I said, well, let me ask you a question. Why are you doing it? Are you trying to run a race or something? No, I want to just get in shape. I said, well, and then I explained the science of what I just explained to you, and they realize that they're kind of wasting their time. Yeah, they're burning calories, but they're burning the wrong calories. Now, don't get me wrong. High-intensity cardio does have an afterburn. So after the event's over, your metabolism's a little high for a few hours after. But same thing with steady-state cardio. You might have to do a little more steady-state cardio to burn the same calories, but at least the calories you're burning are all fat calories. And that is the most important aspect of it.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not already following us on Instagram, official_RxMuscle. If you're new to this channel, we welcome you. We ask that you subscribe below, hit the notification bell so you're not going to miss any of our upcoming shows, videos, segments. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. And as always, we appreciate all of your support. Let's go to good friend, a longtime fan of the show, Shane in the Blues. I've confirmed through ultrasound that I have a partial tear of the common extensor tendon in the lateral side of my forearm. So bottom line, the tear has made it tough for me to grip anything strength related, and I had to stop training. Is there anything you'd recommend exercise or supplement wise to speed up recovery? Would it still be safe to weight train, say using Smith machines, take pressure off the forearm or grip strength, or is it better to wait for a full recovery?
It's hard for me to give advice on because I don't really know the extent of the tear. I would probably listen to the doctor to a certain degree and let that muscle heal. I mean, you could certainly use grippers. I sell a pair called the Jumbo Palumbo grippers on my DavePalumbo.com website. I know Versa Grippers makes a version of that too. And you can kind of hold on. So you're not really pulling from your forearm. You're kind of just, you're pulling from your elbows essentially. So, I mean, you can work around that injury for sure. Smith machine, I would probably just use all machines until it heals up enough so that you're not being required to kind of stabilize anything with that forearm, tear. It's a nasty issue because it's really a small muscle probably, but it hurts like a bastard. I know. I've pulled that muscle before. It's not fun. So I would be definitely taking a lot of glucosamine and MSM, which is something you can find in my Ortholyze product from Species Nutrition, 5 pills twice a day. I would definitely be taking extra vitamin C, connective tissue, which helps heal connective tissue, 3,000 milligrams per day. A little BPC 157 from TitanMedicalCenter.com or wherever you guys get it. I mean, it will definitely help. 200 micrograms twice a day. Even a little growth hormone too, I use a day is helpful. Now, I don't know what this person's, background is in terms of what chemicals and stuff they've taken in the past, but that's kind of like the healing cocktail, we call it, the Arthrolyze, and I would take minerals too, because, calcium, magnesium, all that stuff is integral in healing of tendons and connective tissue as well. So you can use a product like my B Mineralize, but vitamins, minerals, glucosamine, MSM, vitamin C, BPC, which is a healing peptide, works really well. and GH. I mean, that's going to help you speed up the recovery of what's going on. It's not going to heal it overnight, but it's going to heal it at a more accelerated rate. So I would do that. And I would try to work around whatever doesn't hurt, do it. If it hurts, don't do it. A lot of times when I used to get injuries in my upper body, I focused more on my legs. If I got an injury in my leg, I'd focus more on my upper body. So nothing wrong with taking 2 weeks off, letting that thing heal a little bit, and then kind of babying it when you come back. But I would also get massage. I would get, some deep tissue in there once it heals a little bit so that you can prevent scar tissue from building up. It comes with the territory. We all tear muscles. We all hurt ourselves, injure ourselves in the gym. When you're lifting that kind of weights, you have to expect it. And you know what? It's how we work around it and how we overcome these obstacles that make you either a champion or the guy who quits. Don't be the guy who quits.
There was another one that you mentioned specifically when I went through the forum issues, active release therapy. That was very helpful, I guess, my own recovery.
The only reason I didn't even mention that, Sid, which is a good thing to mention, is because the person said they tore the muscle. So, but yeah, when you're healing up and to break up the scar tissue, absolutely ART.
Very important question here, because this is something that you mentioned a couple of weeks ago. I think it was on Heavy Muscle Radio. You're talking about how bodybuilders should be considered a, quote, different species as it relates to blood results. That being said, is there a threshold where you would say certain markers are too high even for a bodybuilder? How will bodybuilders truly know when they really have a health problem?
Well, a lot of people send me their blood work and ask me, am I dying or am I good? There's not a lot of doctors. I mean, if you find a doctor who's knowledgeable enough about sports medicine and understands what I've been explaining, the nuances on blood work, then that's great. But there's not a lot of them around, unfortunately. That's why a lot of people send me their blood work and ask me what I think. But creatinine, when you have high creatinine, usually means your kidney's under some kind of stress. That's something that even bodybuilders, have to be wary of if that's high. And I usually send people for a cystatin C test after that, which is another blood test that it gives you definitively kidney health. It's much more definitive for creatinine. They don't test that normally, but it's something that you can ask your doctor to send you for if you're having high creatinine. If your LDL cholesterol carriers come back super high, which are the bad cholesterol that you don't want to be high in your body, if that comes back super high, you probably want to address that, because that's something that's not being caused by your weight training, So it's either genetic, diet related, or maybe drug related. Liver enzymes, as I mentioned, are very, very poor indicators of anything, because those enzyme levels are found inside muscles too. So when you break down muscle, they're going to be high. That's, if your white blood cell count is all messed up, that has nothing to do with bodybuilding. That could be a problem. They could have leukemia or something like that. You want to check that, or lymphoma. So there are tests that, you can definitively say are health. If your hemoglobin A1C, which is your average blood sugar over 3 months, is high, you better address your blood sugar issues. If your fasting blood sugars are high, address those. So a lot of stuff on blood work is accurate, but there are a couple things that are inaccurate. Like I said, the liver enzymes are the most inaccurate. CPK, I don't see that routinely tested anymore, but any kind of CPK level checks are going to be through the roof too from weight training, and that's pretty normal as well. But if someone has a question, you can always reach out to me and ask me, hey, I have this blood value, it's a little elevated. What do you think about it? I think that's probably the way to go at this point.
Let's go to RJMCC. If you could only afford one, would you take TUDCA or oral glutathione supplements for liver health?
Personally, glutathione is great because it's a great antioxidant, and it does help a little bit with liver detoxification, but more with oxidation stuff, stuff where your body is producing a lot of free radicals. The thing is with your body is that our bodies naturally produce glutathione. Now, it's great to supplement. I take an injection of glutathione every day because I'm a neurotic. But if I had to pick something for liver detoxification, where the liver, it's going to help cleanse the liver, I wouldn't even go with TUDCA. If I had to pick one thing, I would pick like milk thistle, which is silymarin, which is that's the actual chemical in there. Milk thistle opens up the bile ducts. So your liver basically has all these ducts. We call them bile ducts. So the liver produces the bile. they flow through these ducts into the gallbladder, which is right there next to the liver, and the gallbladder concentrates that bile. And then when you eat a fatty meal, the gallbladder contracts, it releases the bile, and bile is like soap. It breaks up the fats we eat into like little droplets. Okay, that it emulsifies them. And then the pancreatic lipases, which are the digestive enzymes for fat, break down the fat and digest them into fatty acids. So those bile ducts that are all throughout the liver are also what drain the toxins out of the liver. So the liver breaks down all the crap you put in your body, and then all the toxins flow through the bile ducts into the gallbladder. They get released through, into your intestinal tract, and you poop it out. The problem is when the liver gets inflamed because it's being asked to do a lot of work, whether you're taking an oral steroid, you're drinking too much alcohol, whatever the case may be. When the liver becomes inflamed, okay, those bile ducts get constricted off, and then the bad crap can't flow out. And what it does is it backs up into your liver, and it makes the liver swell and increase in size, and then it can also cause scar tissue laying down in there. We don't want that. Fibrosis in the liver is not good for the liver cells because they cannot regenerate from that. So what milk thistle does is it opens up, it dilates those constricted bile ducts, and it allows stuff to flow out better. And so you can detox the liver better on milk thistle than you can without it. And so that's why it's a great supplement. I sell a product called Liver Stable from Bill Llewellyn makes it. And it's such a good product. I put it on my website and I sell it. I mean, I probably sell more than he does probably of it because, I have a lot of people who follow me, and I give out my detox program for free. And that's one of the things I suggest on there. There'll be the Liver Stable product along with the kidney stuff product for kidney detoxification as well. So, these are things you have to consider. If you're going to take steroids, you got to detox. And I take milk thistle every day, and I'm not even on any steroids just because I think it's good for you, So I personally, like I said, I stay on it all the time. You don't have to. You can do it. You can cycle the liver detoxification type stuff for when you're doing maybe heavier cycles. But if you can afford it, it is a good product to stay on all the time.
Backup 98. The better mass builder, DECA or Equipoise?
Sid, people ask me this a lot, and I really think they're pretty comparable. I like EQ because it makes you really hungry, and you get a great pump on it, and it doesn't really have any side effects that I'm aware of because I've never experienced any from it, and it stacks very well with testosterone. It's long acting, so it's not toxic. But then on the other hand, DECA is also really good, and DECA has an added advantage because it has a really good anti-inflammatory effect. So people love taking DECA because their joints feel so good on it. The negative with DECA is some people get high prolactin from DECA, and prolactin can inhibit erections. So some people get erection disorders on DECA. They can't, and it's called DECA dick, and they can't, consistently keep an erection while they're having sex. Now, I believe that to be dosage related, meaning if you take too much DECA, you're going to have more of a chance of having that as a problem. But I know people that are very sensitive to it. They can take literally 50 milligrams of DECA and have a problem. Whereas other people can take, I can take 500 milligrams a week of DECA and I'll never have a problem from it. It just doesn't do that to me. Maybe I don't produce a lot of prolactin in my body, but that's the drawback of DECA. The advantage of DECA is the anti-inflammation. So I put them on the same level. I say they're pretty balanced. If you had to pick one or the other, you can flip a coin. Usually I tell people do 8 weeks of one and then 8 weeks of the other one, switch back and forth because they are really both good drugs.
Alexander Ruin, coach, if you don't have a training partner or a spotter, would one set to failure still be enough? Sometimes it takes me weeks to get from rep 6 to rep 7, for example, and it's really annoying that I can't progress. I would ask for a spot, but most people where I train don't even know what that is.
Yeah, if you don't have a spotter, what I recommend you do is do a drop set. I used to do that all the time. If I didn't have someone with me, let's say I can bench press 315, for instance, for 6 reps, okay, or for 4 reps, and I want to get 6, but I can't get 6 myself, and I don't have a spotter. I'll do the 4, rack it, pull 2 plates, or a plate and a half off, and then I might do, 185 for another 4 reps. So I still did an 8-rep set. I just did really heavy weight for the first 4, and then I dropped it down. and intensified it. Because let's face it, if you had a spotter there who was lifting a little bit of the weight to help you get through those reps, forced reps, he's doing essentially what you're doing anyway. He's taking some of the weight off of you without actually having to strip the plates off. So drop sets kind of function very similar to forced reps. It's just nicer when you have a training partner there because they can kind of just give you just enough to get you through the rep without giving you too much. Whereas if you do a strip set or drop set, as we call it, you know, the weight will be substantially lighter because you want to make sure you can get it up. And so it might not be as intense, but it works. That's my suggestion. I like I said, when I would be on the road or I didn't have someone around with me at the gym, that's what I would do.
True Transformation Coach has concerns, heard that ketosis causes kidney damage, and there are some articles online supporting this idea. Says he does a cyclical ketogenic diet based on Mauro Di Pasquale's anabolic diet with carb refeeds on the weekend. Since it takes 3 days to get into ketosis, I'm probably only in it for 2 days before switching to carbs. And again, to address the potential kidney concerns of being in keto.
Yeah, there are no kidney concerns being in ketosis. All ketosis means is that the brain is not using carbs as a fuel source. It's using fat as a fuel source. And the way you induce that is you restrict carbohydrates in the diet. So when you restrict carbs, the brain has no fuel source. After 72 hours, it realizes this. It switches its metabolism and starts using fat, specifically ketones, which are fat byproducts, as a fuel source. And that's it. There's no greater strain to the kidneys because your brain is using fat rather than carbs as a fuel source. I don't know why it would be a problem. So, the problem is there's a lot of misinformation out there, and they take these people who are sick already and they do studies on them, and then they find, oh, look what happened to this person. Well, the person was already in kidney failure, or the person was already a type 2 diabetic with kidney stress. So, a lot of people who do a ketogenic diet have never eaten a high protein diet. Imagine that. So they probably eat mostly carbs. Now you put them on a ketogenic diet, they're going to be eating a lot more protein, obviously, because they can't eat carbs. They're going to be eating some fat in their diet. And now the kidneys, if they were stressed already, maybe because they had type 2 diabetes and maybe they had kidney disease, now the kidneys they have to work harder because these people might be doubling or tripling their normal protein intake. So their creatinine levels might go up because of that, because now all of a sudden their bodies, which are not fully functional in the sense that their kidneys are not fully functional, are being asked to filter more protein out of the blood, which it wasn't doing before. So there's a lot of skewed. I read these studies and I'm like, oh, they're so flawed, these studies. It's unbelievable what they do with some of these studies. And a lot of times, most of the studies are done with people who are sick. So they're not bodybuilders who are doing these studies on. They're taking people who have chronic diseases, who are desperate, and they're saying, we're going to do this study. You're going to eat this diet. You're going to eat that diet, and you're going to eat this, take this supplement. You're going to take that supplement, and we're going to see what the results are. But it's really not an accurate study because you're working with sick people. And the better option to do these studies would be to take people who work out, who are in good physical shape, and then subject them to the different conditions in the study. Because then if you see a change or something happens, hey, these guys were healthier ahead before time. Now all of a sudden they're not healthy. Maybe there's something to this. So I wouldn't worry about it. There's no science behind the fact that a ketogenic diet is bad for you. It just doesn't exist. Don't believe it.
Nico Kandemir, if you compete on a given weekend and your next competition is a month later, I mean, the way he asks is the amount of drugs is the same throughout the month you use for the first competition. So I guess in your experience as a coach, how do you go about in terms of protocols leading from the first competition to the second one, given that you have some few weeks as a buffer?
Yeah. If it was a 2-week wait, I probably wouldn't change anything. If it's a 4-week wait, a lot of times I'll cut back my fat burners, especially if the person was in shape for the first show. Let's say they're doing clenbuterol and they're using some T3. I'll cut that back quite a bit, and because they don't need it, they're already in shape. And if necessary, I'll rebuild it back up over the 4 weeks. Usually, whatever steroid cycle they kind of left off on, and I'll just continue that. That's only 4 more weeks at that point. It's not going to be a big deal. The diet is probably the thing and the cardio is what I play with the most, because if you're in shape, you're not going to need as much cardio. They might be doing 20 minutes of cardio now, whereas before I might have had him doing an hour and a half of cardio. Likewise with the diet, I might be feeding them more food, and it's going to be based on how they look because they're already in shape. So I might be giving them a cheat meal every other day. Who knows? It really depends on how lean they are and how they look. If they start getting too flat because they're already in shape, and I see their bodies are going to start going in the wrong direction, I feed them more. So diet, cardio changes a lot. Drugs, not so much, unless you have someone on a lot of fat burners. You might want to ease it back and then re-peak them for that second show. Everyone's different, and it depends on how many weeks away the show is. In this case, he's saying 4 weeks. So usually a 2-week taper and then build up again the last 2 weeks leading up to the show. That usually works perfectly.
Question about from Arturo Garbe. Question about why bodybuilders in the open class are not competing here in the U.S. Seems like the shows in Italy, Spain, and Europe. So I mean, this kind of goes back to a conversation we were having about why you're not seeing some bigger names at some of the pro shows we've had to this point. I mean, his opinion is that some of the shows in Italy, Spain, and Europe have had better lineups and the guys look better in condition compared to here in the U.S. And then he goes on to ask about, prize money increased to the 212 and classic since they're the ones competing the most.
The people who compete overseas are typically the people who live overseas. The Europeans, the Middle Eastern guys, even some of the Asian guys. A lot of times they'll go to the European shows because, number one, it's closer, more convenient. And a lot of times they feel they're going to get a better shake from the judges there because they're from that area. So there are a lot of good international bodybuilders out there. I mean, a lot. So, some of the guys who are in the top echelon at the Olympia level will come to the U.S. to compete. But those other guys, they probably don't have the money. And you know what? Quite frankly, they probably get a better look from the judges out in Europe, and they'll compete at those European shows. Whereas the Americans feel like, hey, we're going to be, why spend all that money to go over to Europe and compete when I can compete here where people kind of know me and, maybe I'll get a better shake. And personally, if I was competing as a pro, I probably would try to do at least a European show once a year just to get out there and network with people. But I understand, why there's a divide. And let's face it, a lot of bodybuilders are going to be competing over the next couple of shows that we have now because they waited. Thank God Labrada did Tampa. So he's going to still be in Texas, but he kind of got that out of the way. But there are still some guys that need to requalify. And we're going to see them at these last 2 or 3 shows prior to the Olympia. And, maybe some of them might have to go over to Europe because there are more European shows towards the Olympia than there are, shows in the U.S. here. And if you don't win a show, you don't go to the Olympia anymore. There's no... there used to be top 3. Then they went to a point standing where they took the top 5 point getters. That doesn't exist anymore. So you got to win a show. So there's only so many shows to do. If I was a top, pro right now, I would be considering there is a strategy here. Hey, who's going to be at this show? Who's going to be at that show? I better get my ass in an early show in case I have to do a couple shows to qualify for the Olympia. And, that's the way it is. Other than that, that's the best explanation I can give you. Can't hear you, Sid.
Yeah, my kid walked into the room, so I had to mute it real quick. All right, so last question from Pipes. What do you think about the recent claims from other fitness gurus relating to DECA and NPP used to linking them to extreme anxiety, depression, and kidney issues? Do you see these symptoms with your clients? I'm 51 years old. I've been using both compounds so many times since the mid-'80s. Never suffered from any of these. My thoughts are the dosages and these nandrolone-only cycles that these guys are running now. 20 years ago, we never heard of any of these symptoms related to nandrolone use, and it's also one of the most studied anabolics that we have available.
Yeah, a couple of months ago, someone sent me an article that they look, I heard EQ causes kidney damage. Well, first of all, anabolic steroids are not really metabolized much by the kidneys. The liver breaks them down, and the kidneys just flush out with the waste products that are left. So most anabolics, I would tend to say all of them, are not toxic to the kidneys. Now, trenbolone has always notoriously, historically too, been linked to kidney damage, and that's because trenbolone raises blood pressure. So it's not that the kidneys need to break down trenbolone; it's that the kidneys are affected by trenbolone's blood pressure raising effect, which can damage them over the long run. DECA, EQ, these are long-acting injectables that stay in your system a very long time, and the liver breaks them down over weeks. They really have very little toxicity whatsoever, and I haven't heard any such thing, and I haven't read anything that convinced me, at least, that these drugs would be toxic to the liver in any way whatsoever. I would think we would have seen a lot more kidney damage than we do. And most of the kidney damage we do see in competitors, because there are competitors that have needed kidney transplants and have kidney issues, is due to high blood pressure. Once again, that's the killer of the kidneys, the high blood pressure, that constant pounding on the kidney tubules from having chronically high blood pressure. And that's why I'm always telling people, check your blood pressure throughout the day. If you're running high blood pressure, get on a blood pressure medication. You want to protect your kidneys. But I don't have any. If anyone has articles they want to send to me, stating, why these people think, or what the study was done showing that they're kidney toxic, I'd like to see them. I want to see the science of it, because in my head, I don't see how it's possible. But you never know. We're always finding out new stuff.
I did want to take one more. This one from Atleti Mi Bolivera. High levels of prolactin disturb the definition of the back of athletes in pre-contest. In your opinion, what is the reason for the lack of conditioning in the back for many athletes today compared to the professionals and even amateurs of the 90s?
I'm afraid to say it, but they don't want to suffer. There's no drug that makes you softer from behind. There's no,
that's what I was going to ask you.
No hormone that's
being raised
in
what he was saying about prolactin levels, and I guess
there's no hormone in your body that's being raised. Even high estrogen levels are not going to make you have a soft ass. Okay, if your ass is soft, it's because you have fat there still that you have not burned off. Now, if you have fat in an area that hasn't been burned off and you have high estrogen, you might retain more fluid in that area. But if you burn it off through diet and cardio and suffering and fat burners, it's not there. Once the fat's gone, it's gone, and so it doesn't matter whether you have high prolactin or high estrogen. You're not going to hold water if you have no fat to hold it in. And that's really the truth of the matter. I've never seen a person who's shredded to the bone have a water retention issue. Aside from the fact maybe one person that I know who had kidney issues, but forget that. Assuming you're healthy, if you have no fat in your body, you really don't hold excessive water. Matter of fact, it's hard to hold water at all. And in a lot of cases, people get really flat, and we have to feed them a lot more. So if your butt is not in shape, it's probably because you're not dieting hard enough. And if you lose that fat and you diet harder and you lower your body weight, I guarantee you'll see striations in your butt. I believe that, assuming you have enough muscle, I can absolutely, without a doubt, say that everyone can get in shape, no matter how poor your genetics are. If you're willing to suffer enough and do enough cardio, okay, you will get in shape, and you will get in the best shape of your life. It's just a matter of suffering. A lot of people don't want to suffer. It's too painful. They got too much going on in their life, and I don't blame them. If that's not a priority, then fine. But if it is a priority and you're making excuses for yourself, then I don't respect that, okay? Because I can tell you how to do it. And look, I catch people all the time adding condiments to their food and doing stupid shit. And sometimes they don't know about it, and sometimes they play dumb, and sometimes they do know, and they're just doing it because they're starving and they want to get a little extra something here and there. But you're only cheating yourself at the end of the day. The person who's on stage who looks ridiculous and everyone's like, holy mackerel, how did they get like that? Well, you know what? That person was willing to suffer more than everyone else, and that's why they look like that. So if you want to be a great bodybuilder, you got to be willing to suffer and sacrifice.
And on that note, that's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. We have all new episodes. Yesterday's episode of After Hours. Actually, just earlier today, we released an all new episode of Iron Therapy with Larry Pollock. Now, most of you are familiar with Larry through After Hours now, but for those who have not yet heard really the harrowing story of Larry Pollock, we've interviewed on him a couple of occasions. Dave did full sit down interview talking about his escape from the Mexican the drug cartel and really some of the more hair tingling stories of his escape, of his torture, everything that he went through. And just, this episode of Iron Therapy kind of went even deeper than that. You hear a lot about his family background, some of his motivation to even get into the, line of work that got him eventually captured by the drug cartel. But it is a very, very clarifying talk, a very clarifying episode as far as the backstory of Larry Pollock and, really what makes him the man that he is, and really one of the more stoic presence that you see on the After Hours. So all new Iron Therapy right now on the channel. And of course, all new episode of Heavy Muscle Radio. And then of course, tomorrow, all new episode of Iron Rage with Lee Priest. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.